I am going to move to the second panel, in which we have a big honor and a big pleasure to host the partners of the ASSIST project. Once again, this event is happening because we were partnering with organizations from Germany and Italy and Spain and Ireland and Scotland or UK in the ASSIST project for the last 2 years, and this is the final event. We have our partners here with us who are the experts, who are the service providers, who are lawyers, who worked with victims of trafficking, with survivors, who developed methodology, did research, assessed best practices, existing best approaches to supporting female migrant victims of trafficking for sexual exploitation in Europe. Based on this, they elaborated a set of principles. All those principles are captured in the report. There is a large, comprehensive document available from Immigrant Council of Ireland, who was leading this project, and this report was authored by Dr. Nusha Yankova, who is the anti-trafficking expert with Immigrant Council of Ireland. And additionally, we in the European Network of Migrant Women produced a summary of only best principles.
My name is Mary Henderson, and as Anna has introduced me, I'm a solicitor working at the Immigrant Council of Ireland. In my section of that organisation, I work in the Independent Law Centre, and we provide legal advice, assistance and representation to migrants. And we prioritise working with certain categories of vulnerable migrants where we as an organisation are aware of serious unmet legal needs. One of the groups which falls into this category and that the Immigrant Council has been at the forefront of working to support is trafficked migrant women, and especially women who have been trafficked for the purposes of sexual exploitation. With my colleagues Jennifer Campbell, Dr. Nusha Yankova, and Managing Solicitor Catherine Cosgrave, as well as our CEO, our Administrative Accounts and Communications team, we have been the leading partner working on this project. But before I go on to explain a little bit about my work and the principles around legal assistance that we have identified, I first want to acknowledge the excellent work, dedication and cooperation of our partners. So to JustRight Scotland in Scotland, SOLWODI in Germany, BeFree in Italy, and SURT in Catalonia, and as well as, of course, the European Network of Migrant Women, our hosts today. It is stating the obvious to say that this year has thrown us some elaborate hurdles to overcome, but I hope from today's excellent event, it will also be obvious how much work has been done during the course of this project. Like, it was such a difficult year and we had to rearrange so much, and each of our partners has done just such an excellent job of dealing with this. And as a result, I just want to express my sincere thanks to all of those in our partner organisations who've just been fantastic to work in coordination with. As you've heard, the ASSIST project is focused on delivering legal assistance and integration support to trafficked migrant women. Between all of the partner organisations, we've provided assistance to over 100 trafficked migrant women and girls. For each of the partners, the remit of the ASSIST project was to provide gender-specific support, either integration or legal assistance, to at least 10 trafficked migrant women during the past 18 months. And we've been able to achieve and exceed that target. At the Immigrant Council of Ireland, the solicitors, Catherine Cosgrave and myself, have at the last count delivered gender-specific legal advice, assistance, support or representation to over 25 women. The files opened for clients' applications have ranged from initial legal advice appointments to full representation in applications to the Department of Justice. And I will elaborate a little bit more on what some of the casework has involved. Building on the experience of the organisation, including from previous EU-funded project work and the work of my predecessors at the Immigrant Council, from information sharing with our partners in the project, and from the cases we have dealt with, this project has identified best practice principles that ought to be applied when considering legal assistance and support to trafficked migrant women and girls. It is imperative that free, independent and early legal advice can be provided to women victims of trafficking.
I'm going to hopefully share a presentation. I'm delighted to speak to you today on behalf of the UK partner to this project, looking very much at the practical work that we did with the Assist project. From our perspective, we provided advice to 56 migrant women exploited through sexual exploitation, through appointments and through legal outreach sessions that we delivered in partnership with a specialist NGO in Scotland called TARA, which the Scottish Government part funded these sessions alongside the EU. We've also directly represented 11 women with a number of issues related to integration, which I'll point out later in this presentation. I want to really try and highlight the principles that are in the best practice report, which Mary started to outline through a case study that we worked on at JustRight Scotland. So let me introduce you to Feng. So Feng is someone represented by us. She is a Chinese national who was subjected to sexual exploitation to pay debts that were incurred by her stepfather in China. She was kidnapped as a child, taken from her mother and transported to Europe, where she was exploited in various countries in the European Union before being brought to the UK, where the sexual exploitation continued. And indeed, she was found by the police a few years ago on the street, fleeing her traffickers. The principles of early legal advice came in. Feng was supported by TARA, our Scottish NGO partners, who works with women impacted by human trafficking for sexual exploitation. And as I said, they're funded by the Scottish Government, and that's important to provide these services. They're a female-only service trained to deliver gender-sensitive and trauma-informed support. And initially, Feng required intense assistance from TARA, including specialist mental health treatment, genuinely to be able to just live within society again after years of exploitation. She'd also been unable to find her mother, which was of material concern to her. Indeed, at the start and for the first few years, it was TARA who required to provide a statement of her experiences. It was simply not possible to take this. And indeed, she was noted as one of the most vulnerable women, supported by all the service providers involved in her case. So we initially provide early legal assistance. She was identified as a victim of human trafficking. We provided other immigration and international protection related assistance. She was seen by a female specialist lawyer throughout, and we worked in partnership with all of the services. Recognised as a victim of trafficking, recognised as a refugee, and given a residence permit with a view to long-term settlement in the UK. So that should have been the end, success, everything achieved, but it wasn't. And that's where the Assist project came in. And we needed to do a variety of ongoing assistance to ensure Feng's ongoing protection and safety. There was a serious why. First and foremost, there was a serious issue with Feng's identity, and this came up in a third of the cases that we directly represented under this project. Because even although she was identified as a victim of human trafficking with a residence permit, not all aspects of her account had been accepted. In particular, her date of birth and identity hadn't been accepted. That meant she was forced to use the identity that the traffickers had given her in order to facilitate her entry into and through Europe. Not only was that the identity that she'd been forced to use when she had been exploited, but it was now the identity on her residence permit. And she was re-traumatized every time she tried to move on. This name was linked to any effort in education, employment, housing, medical treatment. It was a complete barrier in terms of recovery and an ability to move on. Feng was also homeless. Whilst she had a residence permit, which meant she could access mainstream housing and support, she was also able to work. Services were there. But it took quite a few years to sort out Feng's status. And at that time, she'd lived in asylum accommodation. So whilst the support was there, housing, etc. was there, she struggled to understand the complex system for housing and government support. She didn't feel safe in the new accommodation she was given, and she ended up technically homeless, sleeping on a friend's couch. Her mother was a key factor in her life. She was continuously trying to find her. But whilst she was using this other identity, it was the identity that was not the one her mother had given her. She was incredibly anxious that her mother would never be able to find her if her mother was looking for her. Also, she felt something that her mother had given her identity, had been removed. This understandably had an impact on her health. She was needed to be re-linked into mental health and NGO supports, not just because of the severity of her experiences. Now it was because of the barriers she was experiencing to integration and the intersecting issues related to her loss of identity, loss of family, and homelessness. So what did we do? And it was a real partnership endeavour. In terms of her identity, we kept pushing the government on this in a variety of formal interventions. We worked with her Member of Parliament, who raised this in the House of Commons in the UK Westminster Parliament. We assisted Feng to change her name through an administrative process, but her date of birth, the wrong date of birth, remained. However, as a result of all of this work and pressure, the immigration authorities agreed to revert to Feng's identity, and her residence permit was changed. That was transformative. Once that was sorted, everything else followed. And you can see on this slide what she said, I am delighted that I am able to use my own name and date of birth. Flowing from that, we worked with a specialist housing agency in Scotland. We worked to ensure she obtained accommodation in a safe and secure area and was no longer homeless. Tara put in place a plan to ensure a gradual shift to independent living. Through Tara and the Scottish Refugee Council, she was assisted into a college programme and to participate in an assisted employment programme, which meant she found part-time work, which she continued in a shop. And I have to say, when I first met Feng, I never thought we would get to the position where she was in work whilst in college. It was transformative. Feng was linked into the Red Cross and still is looking for her mother. And we also assisted Feng to apply for into the state scheme for compensation, where she obtained £22,000, which is now in a trust for her future. And for me, what all this shows is the intersectionality of need and where crisis points arise. Yes, access to early legal intervention and early positive identification is important, but it doesn't end there. There are a number of pressure points that exist. And in each of the areas noted on this slide, we have provided legal advice throughout this project. The provision of these services, or the lack of provision of these services on this slide, each of them has a legal basis. And specialist legal assistance working in partnership with others is important. And so from Feng's case, to reinforce, we can see principles, the best practice principles in practice. Access to a lawyer for all legal matters, a holistic response, a range of legal needs are required to be met. It must be gender sensitive and trauma informed. It was the same NGO, the same legal advice team throughout. Even when other services became involved, we explained to those other services what had happened because she could not. All of these supports and services exist, but by herself, she would not have accessed them. and therefore they're not effective. And my last point is you need a well-funded ecosystem. It's not just lawyers, you need NGOs, you need political will. As I say, in Scotland, these services existed for thing, but our experience shows that NGOs act as important gateways for women who have been trafficked. They facilitated access to specialist advice at the early stage, but also later on, post-identification. And just to wrap up, from our perspective in the UK and Scotland, I would just like to echo my thanks and appreciation to all of our EU partners. It's been a privilege to work with all of you and to bring back the learning to Scotland, where the Scottish Government and key NGOs have fully supported the aims and outcomes of this project. I should also say that the Scottish Government has an ongoing consultation following on from the first panel in terms of challenging demand in the area of prostitution. And we are working with survivors who we've worked with on the EU Assist project to respond to that. It is, however, bittersweet, and it would be remiss of me not to say this. As we finalise this project, the UK prepares to leave the EU after the transition period. And we all face difficult times ahead. And I want to say from our part, and I know from many of our partners, regardless of our membership of the EU, we recognise the importance of continuing to work together across borders, all of us, civil society, government, individuals with lived experience. And we look forward to continuing to work with you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kirsty, for this very, very comprehensive and detailed presentation. I think it's important we hear the exact steps and exact details in the legal cases in order to understand the complexity of the stories of the women who are migrant women specifically, because definitely the issue of legal status and residency and access to rights plays a crucial part here. We have next Laura Sales, who is with SURT Foundation in Spain, and they will present their work. They're one of the partners in the project, and I have to say that all partners carried comprehensive assistance for the victims of trafficking who were part of this project as well. But different partners have different specialization, so to speak, and some of them have really developed good practices in specific areas. So, and this is how the presentations of today are kind of based. So Laura, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. As all of my colleagues, I'm really, really happy to be here in this closing event after these very complicated years that we've had with the COVID experience. But anyway, it was really, really fruitful exchange, and really, really happy to close the project with this event. We are in SURT, which is a women's organization based in the center of Barcelona in Catalonia, Spain. We have developed a specific methodology for the economic empowerment of women, and this is what I would like to present here, basing on our experience with the promotion of the economic independence of women victims of human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation from a gender-based approach. To start, just a brief presentation of who we are. We are a feminist women organization established in Barcelona and working since 1993 to make effective women's rights and to achieve a society based on gender equity and free from gender-based violence. And just a little some figures about our recent work. In 2019, we supported 789 persons. 98% of them were women in very different programs. We provide very different services, from vocational training to a shelter for victims of intimate partner violence, or community programs, always with the common goal of promotion of gender equity and the empowerment of women. In the case of anti-trafficking programs, this is part of the overall common goal of achieving a full a society with free of gender-based violence. And besides our international projects, such as this one, Assist, under the AMIF program, we have different other local programs with the support of the Barcelona municipality, such as an outreach and psychosocial program assisting women engaged in prostitution, which is a key service to detect potential victims of trafficking, especially among street prostitution. We have also an economic empowerment program to support women engaged in prostitution to access the formal labor market. And we also provide 2 specific services for victims of human trafficking, especially trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation. We provide the psychological and legal support inside the Barcelona municipality unit against trafficking in human beings, which is a pioneer program, a public program for the comprehensive support of victims of human trafficking in Barcelona. And we also run a specific program in cooperation with the SICAR, which is a specialist organization in assistance to victims of trafficking, which is has the main goal is to accompany victims, women victims of human trafficking, especially for the purpose of sexual exploitation, to promote their empowerment. And this is what I'm going to explain briefly in the next slides. This empowerment program for women victims of human trafficking is run by an interdisciplinary team, and this is key to have this interdisciplinary team where everyone can complement and learn from each other. The team consists of some social workers, educators, psychologists, and lawyers. The common goal of the program is offering a comprehensive, holistic assistance to victims of human trafficking, allowing for the recovery, their empowerment, and the social and labor integration. In this process to full autonomy, the integration in the labor market is, of course, a crucial step to reach the social integration and integration that is long-lasting and effective. The methodology that we use implies accompanying women in a diagnosis of their mental and emotional health to start a process of recovery, supporting them in the process of capacity building, of strengthening their autonomy and their authority as a driving force to transform the relations of subordination and prevent further forms of violence and exploitation in their lives. And also we support women in the definition of a life project around different areas of their life, such as health, relationships, self-care, social participation. So we do not certainly focus on work only and integration in the workplace, because we deeply feel that all these areas of life are interconnected. And how do we do this? Our main approach is a feminist perspective, a gender-based approach. And we believe that having this perspective is crucial to support women in the identification of the structural gender inequalities, in the social inequalities that affect them, of course, and how these barriers limit their opportunities and their choices. And we think it's crucial also to include in the program tools, to provide them with tools that can help them deal with these barriers at an individual levels in their daily actions, in their daily lives, but also on a collective level as women. We also rely on a competence-based approach, which aims to promote the recovery of the victims' resources, own resources and skills that they have acquired and developed in different activities of their life and different areas of their life, and how these skills and resources can be transferred to the labor market and applied to build a career plan that helps them work towards a full autonomy and in the economic independence. And finally, we rely as well on an intercultural perspective that recognizes diversity and aims to encourage the interaction and solidarity between different cultures. As I just mentioned, our work has economic independence at the core, but it's interconnected with all the different areas of life that we deal as well in the program, the cooperation with CICAR, the partner organization with which we developed this project. So the practitioner's role is to provide counseling to victims so that they find their interests and carry out an action plan that covers the different areas of their life, employment, but also the other areas. In this way, participants identify possibilities to improve and build or draft a roadmap to including actions on how to achieve these improvement proposals. How do we do this? The practitioners guide participants with key questions to carry out first a diagnosis of their situation, and then they draft their action plan, their roadmap towards autonomy. These questions, such as how am I, what are my difficulties and fears, are posed in individual sessions, face-to-face sessions with the victim and the practitioner, but also in group sessions and in other using other methodologies such as mentoring, peer-to-peer mentoring, which is one of the methodologies that we piloted in this project, in the ASSITS project, and which has been very, very successful because allows women to mirror the experiences on their peers and also build mutual support relationships that last, that are long-lasting, that last after the project ends. Practitioners not only support the women in the identification of this starting point, but also help them draft a realistic action plan that they can apply at the short, medium, and long term. To finish my presentation, I would like to point out some key issues that we think that should be taken into account to face the challenges that we have in the assistance of victims in the paths towards autonomy. And the first one is the need to provide tailored individualized support to each one of the participants in our programs. This allows us to take into account the specific needs of each woman, guaranteeing their safety, and also personalizing the methodology and intervention in each case. And this is also related to the need to sustain long-term flexible processes with an ongoing support by the practitioners. Practitioners and programs should adapt to the pace and the rhythms of participants and not the other way around. Of course, this is difficult because this requires resources, economic resources, and also material and monetary assistance for the victims. But in our experience, it's the only way to achieve actual results that are sustained in time. One of the key issues as well is providing support in the recognition of qualifications from the countries of origin, which is a serious problem in our countries in Europe, and results in a systematic non-recognition of the actual skills of migrant women and also victims of trafficking, and a concentration of migrants and also victims of trafficking in very low-paid job positions and, as we know, in the informal economy. We think that a fundamental, very useful tool to overcome this barrier of the non-recognition of qualifications is to resort to competence-based methodologies, such as the one I just presented. Practitioners support the participants in the identification and the promotion of the resources and the skills that they have. And they have acquired, for example, in their care work, which is one of the main areas where the very consistent skills are developed. And these skills can be then transferred to the labor market, practiced there, and valued individually as for them as women, and also socially.
Excuse me, Laura, I will ask you to wrap up, please.
Yes. Just 2 sentences to end. Of course, this methodology requires that a conception of the empowerment process, which is centered on each woman as a protagonist. The woman is always at the center of their own empowerment processes. And the practitioners should support women only to take their own decisions and to define their actions and their goals only in their own terms. Also, one of the key elements is to engage employers, to raise awareness among them, to so that we try to prevent re-victimization in the workplace, which is one of the main risks that women may face once they enter the formal labor market. And finally, supporting victims in specialized programs such as ours also means letting women go and facilitating their access to general support programs for the whole population. And once the basic competences are acquired in these protected small projects, we think that integration should be to make integration fully effective. Access to these general resources is one of the main routes. So I will leave it here. Thank you very much for your attention and for the opportunity to share our work with you. I will be happy to discuss any issues that you want to get more information from, or reply to any request that you may have in my email.
Thanks so much to all. And really, my speech will end with the projection of a video featuring two former victims of trafficking who became operators to recognize and gratify the commitment of two girls who escaped from the mechanism of trafficking, have undertaken with great motivation the path that led them to become peer operators, and who have started doing their work with girls who have just trafficked with extreme ability and empathy and with excellent results. Two, to create a communication tool capable of reaching a large number of exploited girls. The video will be shared through the social media of our girls that are in contact with girls that are still in slavery. So it became a very important tool. Through SMS, WhatsApp, Instagram, and so on. In fact, at the end of the video, it's possible to see the number, the toll-free number, national toll-free number, anti-trafficking, and so the girl can help, can ask help. Other issues is spreading the concept of empowerment that is the basis of the Assist project and also the basis of the BeFree methodology among stakeholders, policy makers, and civil society. This video has already been broadcast on the occasion of the closing event of the project at Italian level. And the live streaming and the registration on Facebook had more than 1,000 views, and many journalists reported on the event. Created specifically for the Assist project, the video with the story of Isabella and Naomi, but are fake names. Is also an example of the empowerment approach that must be offered to victims of trafficking human beings for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Again, inside the project axis, like an added value, BeFree also edited a book. I can show the book in Italian and in English. That is a sum of our methodology and also a close examination of Italian case. Anyway, about the shelter that we have to offer to the girl. The shelter of the BeFree, that is where Isabella and Naomi began their process of liberation, is a home, a beautiful home in which a community is created. Very important. A lot of work is also done on fostering a feeling of trust, both in the group of guests and between the guests and the operators. Practicing trust, trusting, making other people trust you. These are very significant issues for girls who have been deceived and betrayed in their desires of emancipation from economic, social, and cultural misery in their countries. The operators are all women and they work from a gender perspective that is based on the practice of a political relationship between women. Following the indications of the group of experts on trafficking human beings for the purpose of sexual and or labor exploitation, Brussels 2000, the methodology is based on attention to gender issues, attention to interculturality, adopting a non-judgmental attitude, provision of tailor-made services designed to respond to individual potential and needs, multidisciplinary approach, cooperation with other stakeholders, organization of regular supervision for operators and ongoing training sessions. Use of monitoring and evaluation systems based on satisfaction of women, which is investigated with the method, with the system of the customer satisfaction. Obviously, the shelter has to be in a secure place, which safeguards women and girls from any risk, and organization that manage these places have to be able to create an optimal environment for their empowerment processes. Since the main objective of these structures is a process of social integration for the former victims, the houses must offer many possibilities for empowerment. But about this, Laura said a lot of the things that I wanted to quote, and so I can go very, very fastly. Obviously, we have these priorities because every NGO that is active in this field have to have this priority. And obviously, is also very important to provide for individual psychological support and self-help groups through which to deal with the traumas that every woman has experienced and to find the strength to process them.
In future, I would love to be an operator to help people in the street. Right now, I'm working with BeFree to help ladies, and especially Black girls who are under human trafficking. At this time, there are so many people out there who is also doing this job. They don't have the courage to open up, to tell people what they are going through. I also helped them to contact BeFree for BeFree to help them to put them in a better place. Me, I just want to stand out for the people who are under trafficking because that's what I've been through. I know how it is, and I'm working with BeFree to be an example and also for them to know that there is more than that they are doing. They have a greater future. They have a greater life to live. This is my beginning and which I will never forget. they were the one. I am who I am today because of the help of BeFree, and with the force continue, be what I want to become, make BeFree proud, make myself proud, make my family proud, and also be an example to my friends, you know. So I want to be stand out so that when my friends see me, maybe my story will inspire them.
So first, I want to thank you for hosting the meeting today, and also for ICI for coordinating the project, and all our partners from Assist for enabling us to actually set up these principles that we have published today. So I would like to first say a few words about SOLWODI. So SOLWODI stands for Solidarity with Women in Distress. We were founded in Kenya in 1985. And since 1987, we are also based in Germany. We support migrant women in distress, as our name entails. We have 18 help centers throughout Germany and 7 sheltered housings. And we also have 3 NGOs in Africa and 3 SOLWODI NGOs in Europe, besides Germany. So my name is Anja Wells. I'm a EU project manager at SOLWODI, and my colleague Katharina Hein will introduce herself in a few minutes. I'm going to talk about the medical aspect, while Katharina will talk about the psychological aspect in assisting trafficked women. So many women suffer from severe medical conditions as a consequence of their human trafficking experience, like what Malaika already mentioned during her speech. That's something we quite often experience when dealing with our clients. So we have women that suffer from STIs, have underwent forced abortions, have experienced miscarriages, and suffer from psychosomatic symptoms such as chronic headaches due to their trauma. Therefore, a gender-specific medical care is needed. So how can such a support in a gender-specific way be guaranteed? So that's something we implemented in the Assist project explicitly. So one aspect was, for instance, that we accompanied women to doctors, especially during gynecological examinations. It can be a really re-traumatizing situation. So it's important that somebody they trust comes along, and also offers interpretation, and also ensures that the examination is done in a trauma and cultural sensitive manner. We also provided cultural mediation and aspects of female genital mutilation, because we see that many of our clients are not only a victim of human trafficking, but also have experienced FGM. So here we have to make referrals to doctors that offer reconstructive plastic surgery. And we see a great problem in Germany that many doctors do not have such an expertise, and also that the training on FGM is not considered in medical studies, which we consider to be really important and has to be implemented. We also offer sex education. So we notice that many of our women we support do not know about their body that well, about the sexual organs, menstrual hygiene, what contraceptive methods are available, and that they have a right to decide when they get pregnant and when not. So it's really important that we offer sex education in a cultural sensitive manner. So explaining, for instance, different contraceptive methods, as I've just mentioned. And last but not least, we also offer communication in a cultural and trauma sensitive way, because like if clients have to go to hospital, the staff doesn't speak the language of the trafficked women, and they do not understand why women might react a bit sensitive if they maybe touch them or something like that. So it's very important that we also mediate in such situations. And generally speaking, we think that medical support for trafficked women is important for international protection claims, and that it has to be guaranteed despite any restrictions arising through a given residence permit, because we unfortunately see that such medical assistance is not always guaranteed, because it's not considered decisive enough during an asylum procedure, for instance. So it's something that really has to be done at political level. And we also noticed that if medical support is given, women are more likely to open up towards the police and also gain better trust to the counsellors. So we think it's really important that this is always considered in a gender-specific program for trafficked women. I would like to give the floor now to my colleague Katharina Hein.
I will talk about the access to psychological support services, our experiences and the difficulties. Victims of human trafficking who have been sexually exploited need an easy access to psychological assistance, and it's very important that it's as soon as possible. Unfortunately, from our experience, the access is neither quick nor easy in most cases. And for instance, when the victims of human trafficking are still in the reception facilities, they don't have a normal access to medical assistance. In Germany, they need to go to a first aid station to get help. And often women told us that when they went there with symptoms of PTSD, and they just received, for instance, a pill to sleep or even just a tea. And if a woman only speaks the language Fula, for instance, and no English, then it happened that they cannot even describe their problem. And that's a huge problem. Before seeing a psychotherapist, they need a treatment paper for every single appointment, so the psychotherapist can invoice the treatment. And without the help of social workers, we experienced that this is a huge difficulty and barrier for the women. So when they are not at the point where they have access to a help center for victims of human trafficking that can help them getting psychological assistance, the chances that they don't get access at all are very high. And when we counsel women and they tell us about the symptoms they have, we realize that almost all of them show symptoms of a post-traumatic stress disorder. A PTSD can occur when the mental health issues remain unaddressed. And we have to understand that these women have been exposed to abuse, betrayal, domination, and sexual violence over a long, long period of time. And the trauma has been unaddressed all the time. So the women we counsel suffer from inabilities to concentrate, memory problems, depression, insomnia, and flashbacks. And when we tell them about the possibilities to see a psychotherapist or psychologist, it is also important that we first explain what that actually means. For instance, I've had women in my counseling who said things like, we Nigerian people don't go to these doctors because people will think we're crazy. So it's important to inform them in a culture sensitive way. And even when the woman decides to not see a psychotherapist right away, then we have to make sure that we will be aware of her situation and keep offering this support. Another barrier when it comes to the access of psychological assistance is finding a free therapy place. There are not enough free places, and it can sometimes take months for a woman to get a free appointment at a psychotherapist. Firstly, we need to find a female psychotherapist because from our experience, trafficked women feel better talking to a female than talking to a man. Secondly, the psychotherapist has to speak English at least and must be willing to do the therapy in English. And thirdly, if the victim's language isn't English, it is important to find a psychotherapist who is willing to perform the therapy with a translator. And then everything has to work out because sometimes the client doesn't feel good with a psychotherapist and then we have to look for another one. And the victim's recovery process cannot start without an easier access to psychological assistance and a trauma-informed approach. This is why it is so important that they can have an easier access, a faster access, regardless of her current residence permit, and that there are more free psychotherapist places. Thank you very much.
People mainly from West Africa, as we know, that they enter through human trafficking through coercion using traditional contracts, that is voodoo contracts. And what I've noticed that a lot of studies have been done about how voodoo contracts impact these people in speaking up or coming forward or being identified. But the major problem, the major challenge is that the personnel that are working directly with them are not culturally and trauma-informed or do not understand the power of the voodoo, which makes the victims feel that they are not understood or they are not heard or they are not being helped. Also, what I see is that when they are trying to bring in intervention programs, they are not included, that their narrative is not really included, or they are not asked if they are ready to talk. As Catherine said, that sometimes they're pushed into psychological programs when they are not yet ready to speak up. And some of them that are trafficked by family members is quite very difficult. I understand if you've been trafficked by your sister or auntie, to be ready to give up them because they are family members. What we've done in this case to help with bridging that culture aspect is to push forward survivor-led mentorship, where we link up survivors who have had this experience to be mentoring the ones that are dealing or struggling with this experience to help support them in their recovery. At the same time, there's need for more survivor-led space, like a private space where they can meet, especially survivors with the same experience, to empower each other, and also push forward more culture-centered, trauma-informed psychotherapy. Also, what we do sometime in Holland is that we link them to African religious leaders who really understand the issue of voodoo, like the spiritual aspect, to help them into the healing process.
I would like to say that our work couldn't happen without collaborations in our countries. And by saying collaboration, I mean collaboration not just with fellow NGO independent structures, but also with the state, with the police. In many cases, the police is the authorized authority to identify victims. So it is essential for us to maintain close working relationships and very clear referrals, efficient referrals, in order to be able to really assist trafficked women. And the gender-specific excellence and expertise that we have to transmit it to state bodies that are by definition a bit more neutral in their approach. And I think that our project has helped a lot and has infiltrated, the thinking and changed the thinking of our working partners in all the member states that participated in this project.
Yes, so I totally agree with Nusha, and I can say, for example, in France, the French law, the 2016 French law on combating trafficking, pimps, and prostitution, and accompanying victims of prostitution. In fact, it's in the law, but also we work a lot as activists and lawyers and social assistants to make it clear. So we work directly with police, with prosecutors, judge, to make clear that it's a violence against women, to make clear that to be sure that girls and women who are victims could be oriented to us and not arrested for other crimes or infractions, and to be sure that the law is applied, and to work together to stop also pimps and traffickers. So yes, we work a lot on sensibilization and also on how to apply this law and to be sure that women could be oriented to us.
I was just going to say that from our perspective, and echoing the points that have just been made, the engagement with police, law enforcement, state was a key component to this project. It certainly, from our perspective, was part of our operational work in terms of liaising with law enforcement. It came up in our peer support survivor mentorship. But importantly, for me, and going forward for us, the importance of ensuring that the survivors, the women with lived experience that we worked with for 2 years, ensuring opportunities to speak to our cabinet ministers, the government departments, to be there at that policy and strategic level to input into operational or strategic changes around law enforcement. That was really important. And that's what, for us, we will want to continue to do to ensure that it's not just about one case or operationally, it's about being there when changes or strategic reviews or new legislation or law enforcement practices are being looked at. And it's ensuring women with lived experience have a seat at those tables.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you for making this point as well, because as we have it among the recommendations or principles for best practices on supporting victims of trafficking or migrant women, it is very important to support NGOs, specialist services, women organizations who are working with migrant women victims of trafficking. They have to be there not on a project basis only, but on a permanent basis. And this actually empowers them for this kind of structural engagement with policymakers and other various authorities.
Obviously, Italy is the first country that the migrants from Africa meets. And so our experience may be interesting. The most part of the Nigerian girl ask for asylum when they arrive in Italy. And about a good practice in collaboration with the law, with the tribunal, and moreover with the Commission for the Recognition of the Status of the international protection. Now we have a very good collaboration. Some NGO, BeFree is one of them, is present in the commission when there is the interview with the women that are seeking for asylum. And it's very interesting, Pat, because the girl, if she is again in the mechanism of trafficking, the girl says some fake history that is not true. And in the past, this was a reason for the reject of her request of international protection. At the contrary, now, through a good collaboration between NGOs and Commission and law enforcement and so on, this fact that she is telling a fake history is an indicator of trafficking. And so the girl is the girl enter in a project for protection. So in this moment, she is a good point, and I think that is a good practice that we can share.
It is important to remember that we have problems generally in Europe with disaggregated data. So we just saw the report from the European Commission. And of course, there is a very clear disaggregation. Number one, by sex, by age. What we do not have really is the detailed disaggregation. So we have by migration status, we have, the report says it's very clearly, it's approximately 50-50%, those who are victims of trafficking from outside of Europe, third country nationals so-called, and the European Union citizens. But we don't go deep enough in the disaggregation when it comes to ethnicities, the ethnic background, and this is quite problematic. We know that in some countries, such data, in fact, is not allowed to be collected. There is no harmonization across state on this issue at the European level. This is something that we think needs to be improved.
Well, first of all, thank you all for your interest and for your patience today. On behalf of all partners, I express regret that we are not meeting in person. We hope that we will meet in person next year, at the very least at the European Union Civil Society Platform on Trafficking, which is a forum that we as partners most value and which is vital for our collaborations and work. However, our work with trafficked women continues in person. And this is essential. This is happening as we speak today because victims' integration cannot wait, COVID or not COVID. And for this reason, I would like particularly to thank the European Union funding streams, the AMIF funding, the European Commission for all their work in dispensing this essential funding for the NGOs and the small civil society organizations who are working around Europe to support victims of trafficking and trafficked women in particular, because the member states are not funding sufficiently our work. But without our work, the recovery of these women will be a failure in many cases. I would like to thank our excellent speakers from the European Commission, the United Nations, OSCE, Council of Europe, and others for their informative presentation, and to Dr. Vassiliadou for her insightful comments as a chair. I would like to thank the European Network of Migrant Women, our dear colleagues, Anna's colleagues, for hosting this timely webinar. I would like to thank also my colleagues at the Immigrant Council of Ireland, our fantastic partners, JustRight Scotland, BeFree, SOLWODI, SURT, for their dedication and diligence in implementing this ambitious work program. It is a very innovative project and work program, by the way, that involved survivors not as volunteers, but as unique experts for who they are and as our colleagues in our work. And in collaboration with such women, we distilled a set of best practice principles that complement, in practical terms, the body of rights and obligations to assist the victims in the European Union legal framework. We tried to give a practical meaning to gender-specific assistance mandated in the Anti-Trafficking Directive. We hope you will use those principles in your work, and we hope that you will develop this further, guided by the victims of trafficking you yourself assist. And finally, on behalf of the project, on behalf of all the partners, I extend our gratitude and admiration to the victims of trafficking, the survivors, the inspiring women whose recovery is an indication that our societies in the European Union could be indeed empowering and fair. So thank you so much and good luck with your work.